Good evening, friends. I know it has been a minute, or a million of them, since we've last interacted. I am very sorry about that. First, it started, excuse me, it started out with, throat's a little dry. The holidays, my work schedule getting in the way, and then, I was supposed to have a medical procedure done, and that did not go as planned um, at all. And it just snowballed into other issues. My laptop would not work, and it's not working now, so we're back to the old method of using my cell phone, which sucks. Because my laptop sometimes just the screen shuts off, and I can't get it to turn back on. So, let's see what else. Oh, I lost my other microphone. I have no idea where it is, so I'm using my old one. If you can hear a fan behind me, that's not changing. it's as I like to call it, swamp ass season, and I refuse to turn on my air conditioner. It's not actually that warm in here. I just like the moving air, but I refuse to turn on my air conditioner until like June-ish. So anyway, I am not going to delay anymore. I know that a lot of you have waited a long time for me to come back, and again, I am very sorry about that. You know, um, life just kept getting in the way, and then I didn't have any motivation. And then I've seen a couple of new comments and old comments, and it made me really miss you guys. So, anyway, I know a lot of you don't like the big long intros, so let's jump right back into it. Yeah. So we are on book 3. Yes, book 3. The Woman Who Rides Like a Man. We are on chapter 5. Apprentices. Every night, Coram took time to work on her loom. Even Alanna, who knew nothing of weaving, could see that she spent as much time unraveling mistakes as she did weaving. "I just don't know enough," she told Alanna one night, as Kara and Ishak argued nearby over the use of a scroll of spells. "I was little when I was taught, and I haven't practiced for a long time." She sighed, looking discouraged. "You remember Hakim Farrar, the man you fought?" Alanna nodded. "His mother is the best weaver in the tribe. I'd ask her to teach me, but..." She made a face. "The women think Kara and I have forgotten our place because we sit with the men." "And it doesn't help that I wounded Mistress Farrar's son," Alanna said shrewdly. Coram nodded. Alanna tousled the girl's hair. "I'd give anything to help you, but I don't know how to weave." All 3 apprentices, even Ishak, stared at her. Finally, Kara whispered, "You don't know how to weave?" "Warriors don't learn such things," Ishak told the girl scornfully. Coram stood abruptly. "I'll be right back." She hurried from the tent. "I just thought all girls are taught when we're very young," Kara explained. "You don't know how to card wool or spin thread or..." She stopped, baffled. "I don't know how to bake, either," Alanna confided. "The only cooking I know is the kind soldiers do on the march." Kara shook her head. In many ways, she was a very proper Bazir maiden. Alanna often puzzled her. She was trying to explain the process of weaving when Coram returned, bearing a lap-sized model of her big loom. The girl knelt beside Alanna. "I can teach you the simplest kind of weaving, if you want to learn," she offered. "You can't do anything like stripes, but it would be a start." "I'd love to learn," Alanna admitted. It looks like fun. Coram grinned. It is fun when it goes right, she said. I really shouldn't start you weaving right away. We always learn to card wool, comb out all the dirt and tangles, and spin a good thread before we're let near a loom. Alanna laughed. It's just like every fighting art I studied, she explained to her surprised audience. We learn how to make our weapons before we got to use them. You have to understand how a thing is made before you master it, Kara said wisely. Suddenly, her face brightened. That's what you've been teaching us about magic. So, if you know how the crystal sword is made, you can command it, Ishak added. Alanna fought down a trace of alarm. That's not all of it, Ishak. She fixed his eyes with her own grim ones. To command things of nature, you need to understand how they are made, and you must want to command them. With things of magic, you develop your will until you are stronger than your gift. Otherwise, the power will turn on you. Do you understand me? She demanded. Ishak met her eyes defiantly, then looked away. Of course I understand you. Alanna frowned, worried for him, but there was no sense in pursuing the matter now. She examined the loom she held. What do I do with this thing? Coram explained the device, naming the different parts and describing what they did. When she finished, she worked the shuttle until a row had grown onto the threaded loom. Then she handed it to Alanna. Your turn. The loom was clumsy and awkward feeling to the knight, who was far more used to weapons. At last, she drew a breath and started the shuttle. The moment the thing began to move, she realized she didn't understand what was supposed to be happening. Within seconds, the threads were impossibly snarled. Kara choked back laughter. Even Coram had to smile. Ishak looked bored. Alanna put the loom down, feeling younger and more ignorant than she had in years. Perhaps I need to learn the other things first. My teachers were right. For real skills, there aren't any shortcuts. I'll teach you, Coram offered. If you still want to learn, though it seems silly for you to go to such trouble when the things you do are more important. What's more important than the clothes I wear? Alanna wanted to know. Coram's right, Ishak remarked scornfully. Why should you fool with looms and women's things when you can fight and do magic? Alanna didn't miss the scorn in Ishak's voice, or that both girls had flushed with embarrassment and begun to finger their veils. He needs a lesson, she thought, picking up a thread. This time I'm going to give him one. So, you think weaving is stupid? Women's work, Ishak yawned, very much a Bazir male. It's all right if you've nothing better to do. Alanna swiftly tied a knot in the thread. Ishak fell as the carpet he stood on yanked itself from under his feet, dumping the young man on the ground. The carpet then sailed around the tent frantically. Did I understand you correctly? She asked as the girls ducked and Faithful hissed and spit. Is working with thread less important than talking to demons and seeing the future? When Ishak opened his mouth to reply, Alanna swiftly tied a second knot. The carpet stopped its mad journey, coming to a halt directly over Ishak's head. While I have your attention, Alanna went on, I'd like to say a few things about thread magic. I've never used it. I learned what I know from our village healing woman when I was young, and from the palace healers. I do know that a woman with a bit of string in her hands can bring down a troop of armed knights, if her will is strong enough. Men, healers mostly, use thread magic too, but women acquire it more easily. I guess that's because most women know how to weave and spin and sew. You owe your fellow apprentices an apology, Ishak. She loosened the second knot, and the carpet began to lower itself onto Ishak's head. You can't treat Kara and Kurem as the men of the tribe treat the women. These women are your equals. What they do, what they learn, is just as important as what you do and learn. Frankly, in some areas, they're better than you are. She untied the second knot, and the carpet whisked itself around the tent. Stopping in front of Ishak this time, Alanna undid what remained of the second knot, and the carpet trembled. "You're in its way," she told the young man. Startled, he moved aside, and the carpet settled gently into its former spot. "I hope I've made myself clear." Ishak gasped, his eyes alight with discovery. "Will you teach me how to do that?" he demanded. "I want to learn, women's magic or not." A hand painfully squeezed Alanna's heart. For a moment, he sounded exactly like her willful brother. "I believe I mentioned an apology." I'm sorry," Ishak told the two girls. "I keep forgetting." Kara looked at the thread in Alanna's hands with awe. "You mean Coram and I do magic while we're weaving and sewing? Just by making knots?" Alanna sighed, suddenly feeling tired and old. "I'll teach all of you in the morning," she promised. "For now, let's turn in." Obedient as always, they left, chattering eagerly. Once they were gone, Faithful jumped onto Alanna's left shoulder, his favorite perching spot. "That was an interesting display of temper," he commented. "Why don't you pick on someone who can fight back?" "He's got to learn," Alanna replied, dousing the lamps. "Otherwise, he's going to insult some little old wrinkled lady shaman who will tie him in knots." "Perhaps," the cat replied. "Not just perhaps," Alanna demurred. "You know, as well as I do, that there are traps for sorcerers in the strangest places. At least I know I mean no harm. Someone else might not be kind. You won't always be able to stand between another person and his fate," Faithful warned. "You mustn't think you can look after the world." Alanna chuckled and tugged her pet's long black tail. "Who will look after it if I don't?" Faithful gave a disgusted mutter and stuck his cold nose into her ear, surprising a laugh from her. To the new lessons in knot magic, Alanna added the names and powers of herbs, stones, and metals. Ishak and Kara complained about the added memorization, but they studied hard. Ishak now kept Alanna up at night. He was quicker than the other two, and he had a feel for the gift, but his eagerness to learn dangerous things frightened her. He did not have the self-discipline of the girls. Was it because he had been more accepted by the tribe? Often, Alanna caught him staring at her crystal sword. She feared one day he would ignore her command and try to wield it. As an apprentice weaver, Alanna was all thumbs. The girls were baffled. She reminded herself that she had not been even a passable swordsman when she first began to train. But such thoughts didn't soothe her hurt pride. Making things worse was the fact that there was no way she could teach Coram the advanced skills the girls lacked. "I can't do it!" Coram cried while working one night. A mass of knotted threads, like a giant spider, sat on her loom. "I'm stupid and ignorant." "You lost track of the pattern," a dry voice said from the opening that led to the temple part of the tent. Alanna and her apprentices turned to stare at the tiny old woman who stood there. Alanna recognized her. Alif Sif had pointed Hakim's mother out to her before. The woman Coram said was the tribe's finest weaver. The old lady lifted an unlit stick of incense. "I was about to pay my respects to the mother when I overheard," she explained. Walking forward, She thrust the incense at Alanna. "Hold this." She joined Coram at the big loom. "See? Here and here you broke the pattern. And here." She inspected the remainder of Coram's work as the girl clutched Kara's arm. Not bad for someone without much formal teaching. A tight, even weave." Coram beamed at the praise. "Perhaps the first she's had from a woman of the tribe in years," Alanna thought. Mistress Farrar walked over and picked up the cards, scrutinizing Alanna's work. "Be more patient," she said, her gray-brown eyes amused. "You're missing little bits of dirt." She thrust the pieces of wool back at Alanna. "Start over. And take your time. You'll be faster as you get accustomed to it." She drew a breath, looking around her. "You're a promising weaver, young Coram, but you should be learning your own craft, not teaching it. I am sure your weaving would become better, Kara." The tall girl blushed and looked at her feet. "And you should have a teacher who is accustomed to teaching. Shaman," she told Alanna firmly. "You will learn from me with Coram's permission, and I will show these two young women what more they can study. Doubtless this young man can find something to occupy him while we women work," she added dryly. For the grateful tears and the relief in the girls' faces, Alanna could have kissed the formidable lady. Instead she nodded, her face properly grave. "I accept your kind offer, Mistress Farrar, for my apprentices and myself." "At last!" she exulted inwardly. "One woman in the tribe has acknowledged that we exist, and I didn't have to ask Khalif Sif or Ali Mukhtar to intervene." "I am called Mari," the mother of Hakim replied. "Now, come, you girls, show me what else you can do." When Coram returned a week later, he found things very different. He had much to say about the changes among the Bloody Hawk. Fortunately, he said all of it in private, to Alanna and Faithful. "I think I'm leaving you in a fairly quiet place," he began as he unpacked his tent. Alanna was watching as she scratched Faithful's ear. "You weren't well enough known here that you could get into any trouble, and I thought they'd stay away from you. But I come back, and you're the mother-blessed shaman of the tribe. You've adopted 3 young ones, and you're forcing the women to accept 2 of their own sitting with men." "You're turning purple," Alanna commented, when he stopped for a breath. "Can't you stay out of trouble for a few short weeks?" he bellowed. "I didn't ask for Aknan ibn Nazir to attack me," she pointed out, "but he did, and I killed him. I can't leave the tribe without a shaman, can I? Since I have no intention of being killed by the first rival who comes along, or of staying here forever, I picked 3 apprentices. It's not my fault that 2 of them are girls, but they are, and the tribe has to treat them with respect if they're ever going to be good shamans. And no, I couldn't have chosen just Ishak. What if something happens to him? All 3 have to be trained anyway. And Bazir custom, it's easier to break the king's law back home than it is to flout Bazir custom. Have you noticed? Bazir custom says I have to train them. Besides, having only 1 shaman when you can have 3 is silly." Coram sat heavily and accepted the brandy she poured for him. His broad tan face was wrinkled with concern. "Lass, you're setting these poor folk on their ears," he said wearily. "They haven't changed in centuries, and you're forcing them to accept things your own people can't accept. Not easily." "But don't you see? To the Bazir, I'm a legend. They take things from me they wouldn't take from anyone else. I don't ask them to change for stupid reasons. They know having 3 shamans might make the difference to their survival. Even the women are beginning to accept the girls. At least Mari Farrar is." Coram drained his cup and shook his head when she offered a refill. "I'm worried for you," he confessed. "I hate seeing you A stranger always. You're an odd lass, but you're like my own kin, and I want you to be happy." Alanna put Faithful down and hugged her friend. "I don't feel like a stranger here," she confessed as she wiped her eyes. "It seems to me that I've known these people for a long time. All my life, perhaps. I don't always agree with them, but they make sense to me." Gruffly, touched by her affection, he asked, "Do you commune with the voice of the tribes at sunset, then?" All the way to the city, Hakim made us stop every night while he stared into the fire. He shuddered as he finished unpacking his saddlebags. "'Twas spooky." Alanna lifted Faithful up, putting him on her shoulder. "That's one thing I don't do," she said ruefully. "It's too much like letting Ali Mukhtab have a part of me. I don't want anyone to have a part of me, not yet anyway." "Not even Prince Jonathan?" Coram asked shrewdly. Alanna blushed a deep red, and he chuckled. "He said to tell you he'd be seeing you soon. Something about receiving instruction from Ali Mukhtab. I've letters from you, from Lord Tom and Sir Miles." For a moment the burly man struggled with himself. Then he gave in. "There's another letter for you as well." He drew it from beneath his jerkin, handing it to her reluctantly. "I should have burned it when he handed it to me." "I'd hope you'd know better than still be consorting with the likes of him." "George!" Alanna said gleefully. "Is he all right? Has he been, well, safe?" "He's flourishing, that one," Coram snapped. "And when are you going to I will get this right. And when are you going to give over befriending a rogue like him?" I got it. Alanna laughed impishly. "When you stop drinking." She laughed as he swore, and returned to read her letters. George's missive was short, but its contents made her blush. She knew her old friend loved her, and she loved him in a more than friendly way. But Jonathan had always been first. George knew it and understood, but his words told her that he continued to hope. Miles's letter was long and chatty, giving her the news of everyone at court, nobles, and servants. More than any other high-born person Alanna knew, Miles made friends with everyone, not just his social equals. He was able to tell her about Cook and Stephen the hostler with as much detail as he gave to the king and Jonathan. Only when she reread his letter did she notice that he said nothing about Tom. Tom's own letter more than made up for Miles's omission. "Dear Alanna, Coram tells me that you've been adopted by a bunch of uncivilized desert men. How odd of you. He tells me now that you're a man of the tribe, which is what you've always wanted, I suppose. No, don't scowl at me." Alanna was scowling. "I am enjoying myself here. Everyone is very polite, and the library has some classics of sorcery even my masters didn't possess. My education grows by leaps and bounds. I've attached some of the late Duke Roger's followers, including the lovely Delia of Eldorn. I have no interest in the lady as such, but I believe she may know where some of Roger's most secret manuscripts are hid. She had hinted as much, and I feel that she doesn't lie. I enjoy the luxuries, exotic foods, fine clothing, and having servants to wait on me. I will travel at some point, but only when there's nothing more to be learned here. Try not to be disgusted with me. Love, Tom." Shortly after Coram's return, Mari brought Farda, the tribe's midwife, to make her peace with the new shaman. Within minutes, the two were trading secrets of healing. The next day, Farda took over instructing the apprentices in herbs. From that moment on, most of the women made their peace with Alanna and her young people. Some would never be won over, and would always view the new ways with suspicion, but they were a minority. Knowing to whom she owed her new warmth, Alanna tried to thank Mari Farrar. The old woman brushed her words aside. All things change, she told Alanna frankly. It does not hurt men to know women have power too. Alanna had to laugh. Until Mari and Farda entered her life, she never realized that the tribeswomen viewed their men not with fear, but with loving disrespect. Sometimes she felt that she was the one getting the education, not her pupils. Kara was just beginning to work on her control of the wind when the men of the village went hunting for night raiders. Hillman, who carried off a herd of sheep, and the boy tending them. Alanna and Coram were teaching the boys archery when the lookout sounded an alarm. Coram swore. They lured the men off a purpose. He turned to the boys. Let's see what your marksmanship's like on moving targets. What about the shamans? One woman cried. They attack first with magic. Alanna could feel the unnaturalness of the fierce breeze. Kara, Coram, Ishak, she yelled, remembering too late they were in Farda's tent across the breadth of the village. It would cost precious moments to fetch them. The 3 apprentices ran up, panting, chasing Faithful. The cat said the hillmen were attacking, and you want us, Ishak gasped. I don't know how we understood. I didn't understand anything, Coram pouted. You and Kara said... Hush, Alanna ordered. She looked at Coram. I have to be a shaman, she began. The former guardsman was still instructing the boys' archers as women and children streamed past them into Alanna's big tent. Do what you must do, he said tersely. He grabbed a strong young woman by the arm. Ye, grab a spear and stand to the defense. She stared at him for a moment, then ran to obey. The older men of the village, who hadn't been included on the hunt, were already gathering around, Coram accepting his leadership. More women were grabbing spears and axes, leaving their children to the charge of others in the tent. Alanna led her apprentices to a hill overlooking both the tents and the eastern approaches, from which the now shrieking winds came. Kara saw the attackers first, hidden behind a wall of dust. She pointed out 5 green-robed men astride ponies. Their shamans wear green too, she shouted over the wind. The dust before them is alive. When they came before, Akdan ibn Nazir could not fight them, and the dust devils killed 3 men. I'm not Akdan ibn Nazir, Alanna shouted back. Drawing the crystal sword, she focused her attention on the links of the blade, holding it directly before her. Now was the time to put its energy to use. It would extend her ability to command things to break and split far more than she could have done normally. She shouted the spell, sending her energy streaking down the smoky blade and into the earth just a few yards in front of the oncoming riders. The earth grumbled and cracked, forming a deep trench. Their own frontal vision ruined by the dust devils, the hillmen in the first rank rode into the trench. That'll stop 'em for a minute, Alanna yelled. Coram, do you have some string? The girl pulled several hanks of thread from her pockets. She was never without them these days. Try to hobble as many of their ponies as you can. Coram grinned and started to work. Her heavy brows pulled together as she worked. Kara, Alanna continued, force the wind back into their faces. Both girls tore off their veils in order to see more clearly as Alanna turned on her 3rd apprentice. Ishak, do you remember how to throw fire? Yes, he cried. When they get close enough, scorch them out of the saddle. Ishak bellowed, What about the dust devils and their shamans? Leave them to me. The sound of the high winds changed. Kara was at work, her burnous whipping frantically around her. The first pony stumbled and fell, thanks to Coram tossing his rider. Flames soared from Ishak's fingers, enveloping a big man. The hillmen were leaping their ponies over the trench. Once more, Alanna pointed the crystal blade and sent her gift into the ground before the dust devils breaking it open. The brown columns of dust passed over the second trench as easily as they had the first, and Alanna turned her attention to them, reaching out with her mind to see what they were. They were mindless blots of energy, wielded by the shamans and collecting desert sand and dirt to give themselves shape. She knew better than to use the sword to split them in two. Then she would have twice as many dust devils to contend with. Instead, she sent a whip of violet fire at the shamans, determined to end the problem at its source. One dropped to the ground when her magic reached him, screeching in agony. A second streak of fire, red in color, picked off another shaman. Ishak had seen her purpose and was helping. Varicolored shields were forming around the remaining three. The element of surprise was gone, and they were defending themselves. Now, Alanna called up a sparkling amethyst-colored wall that encircled one of them, cutting off his air. His pony panicked and reared, dropping him in the dirt as he fought to breathe. When she was sure of his death, Alanna applied the same trick to another shaman. The remaining wizard was already fighting off Ishak's red flame, and losing. With the death of the last two, the dust devils collapsed. Hillmen shuddered past them, their numbers reduced. Coram sagged and dropped, exhausted from the effort of maintaining 5 spells at once. Kara was looking white and ill, but with the deaths of the shamans, the winds had also stopped. Alanna made her sit down. Ishak was still flaming the raiders, laughing merrily as they tried to put themselves out. "It's beautiful, Alanna!" he cried loudly, not realizing the winds were gone. "The power is beautiful!" "Look!" Kara gasped, pointing to the west. Halif Sif and his men were riding furiously into the village, their swords ready. Caught between Ishak, Coram, and the fiercely fighting old men, women, and the boys, as well as the young warriors of the tribe, the hillmen didn't stand a chance. Alanna picked off those who tried to escape, so that none survived the raid. The moment the fighting was over, Alanna ushered her apprentices back to the well, where Farda was already putting women to work cleaning and bandaging wounds. Alanna made Kara and Coram set, then briskly rolled up her sleeves. "Anyone killed?" she asked Farda, washing her hands. The big midwife shook her head. "Hassam and Mikhail were the worst hurt. Hassam with a head wound, Mikhail with an open gash on his thigh. Will you see to one?" Alanna nodded and entered her immense tent. Feeling Ishak behind her, the wounded lay quietly on the carpets placed before the plain altar, waiting for someone to see to their hurts. Clearly, Farda had taught the woman how to care for injuries, because every matron in the village was cheerfully at work. Some of the hurt, such as Hassam, were boys, but they were silent as the men. Alanna knelt beside Hassam, smiling at him. A wide-eyed girl, not long a wife, hurried to stand beside her with a basin of hot water and clean bandages. Alanna dipped one in the water, using it to carefully rinse Hassam's wound clean. "What happened to the hillman that gave you this?" she asked jokingly. "Is his spirit looking for a place to rest?" "Coram cut him down while I fought him," the boy replied, wincing as she gently pulled his hair away from the wound. "He said honor is not necessary when fighting thieves." "I'll need healing salve, thread, and a very fine needle. Tell Farda." Alanna instructed the waiting girl, who nodded and hurried off. Alanna examined the wound closely. "I think Coram told me the same thing when I was your age, and that wasn't so long ago. Hold still." She closed her eyes and reached out into his body, searching out the full extent of the wound's damage. She grimaced inwardly at the sick feeling in the boy's skull. He had a bad concussion. Still, it could have been far worse. The bone was uncracked, and there was no bleeding in his brain. She squeezed the boy's hand. "You bruised your head." she told him, knowing that he would have no idea what a concussion meant. "You'll be dizzy and sick for a while, and you'll have trouble standing, so don't try it. Now, I'm helping you to sleep so I can sew your wound in peace, all right?" Hussam nodded, his large eyes full of trust. She placed her hands on his once more, reaching for the warm fire of her gift. This time, it flowed softly and peacefully down her arms, making her feel nearly as relaxed as the boy, who went to sleep instantly. She stopped for a moment and sighed, before pulling her mind back to her surroundings. The girl had returned with the materials she needed. Deftly, Alanna thrust undyed thread through the needle's eye. Glancing at the watching Ishak, she said, "Make yourself useful, will you? Hold him." The young vizier obeyed, holding the sleeping boy's head gently but firmly between his hands. "Won't it hurt?" he asked apprehensively as Alanna tested the needle's point. "Ouch! Not now. Not after I've used the gift to put him to sleep. Steady." Quickly she set her stitches, thanking the gods yet again for the training she had received from the palace healers during the Therein War. The stitches in, she cut the thread and bandaged the wound, using healing salve and a clean bandage. Finally, she replaced Ishak's hands with her own. Hussam never stirred. His slumber deepened as she used her gift again, shoving back the damage done by the hillman's axe. Dimly, she could hear Faithful yowling behind her, but her mind was fixed on her work. When she had aided nature all she could, she released Hussam into a real sleep. With luck, he would be well soon, with an interesting scar for the maidens to admire. She stood, her ears roaring. Preoccupied by Hussam's injury, she thought at first she had risen too quickly. Then the sick, weak feeling swelled up from her midsection, and she swore even as her legs buckled. In the excitement of fighting, of keeping control over the crystal sword, of her worrying over the tribe's young ones, she had overextended, using more of her gift than she could afford to give away. "I'll never learn," she thought ruefully as she fainted. It was fully dark when she woke. Faithful was howling urgency right into her ear, and a slim hand gripped her shoulder, shaking her. Warily, she opened her eyes, trying to focus without much success. "It's really better if you let me rest," she muttered. I just overdid it a little, that's all." "Faithful says to wake you," Kara apologized. "He says it's Ishak." A bolt of alarm shot through Alanna, and she fought to sit up. Bone-deep weariness tugged at her like chains, trying to drag her down. "Ishak? Bless him, what's he doing now?" Her alarm was even greater when she realized that the ember on her neck was warm. No, hot. "He has the sword," Faithful cried. "While the tribe met with the voice, he came here and took the sword." Her heart thudded sickly. Alanna lurched to her feet. Her head spun. She held it, forcing her eyes to remain open. She was in no shape for a showdown. Gripping the ember stone, she sent a plea to the goddess for Ishak's sake. Strength washed into her, steadying her shaking limbs. Closing her eyes, she reached out, searching for a sign. Any sign of her wayward apprentice. Her mind touched the web of magic that was the crystal sword as it vibrated with new heights of fury. The weapon had come to accept her commands, just barely, but it would never accept Ishak. Opening her eyes, she raced towards the hill where they had found the raiders that morning. He was shining in his own red fire, the sheathed sword in his hand. An orange glow surrounded the weapon, battling with the young man's magic. For a second, Alanna's mind flickered, and Ishak was replaced by a vision. An azure sky rapidly clouded over with thunderheads, a pole thrust against it like a pointed finger. At its base a fire burned, and the woman tied to the pole screamed in agony. The vision was gone, and she could see her apprentice clearly once more. "Ishak, no!" Alanna yelled hoarsely. She reached out, but the bolt of power she threw at him was thin, and it vanished far short of the mark. She would never reach him in time. "Don't! The sword, it'll turn on you!" "Why should you have it, woman who rides like a man?" he yelled back, triumphant. "You won't even use it! You don't use your own gift as much as you could. You don't deserve to have more. I deserve the sword. I want the power." "Then why didn't the sword come to you instead of me?" Alanna cried, hoping to keep him talking. She was at the hill's base now. "You can't use this power, Ishak. The sword's been warped. No!" Ishak drew the sword, holding it aloft. Orange fire shimmered around the shining gray of the blade, pulsing fiercely. He laughed and pointed the sword at Alanna, speaking a word she couldn't hear. Instinctively, she threw all the strength the goddess had given her into a shield. She had wanted only to defend herself, but the sword's magic reflected back from her protection, enveloping Ishak in a ball of flame. He screamed once, then he was gone. Tears streamed down her cheeks. Alanna trudged up the hill. There was nothing left of Ishak, or of the scabbard he had carelessly thrown on the ground. Wiping her eyes on her sleeve, she wished he could have listened to her just one more time. The tribespeople were waiting for her when she descended with the crystal blade shimmering in her hand. "What will you do now?" Halif Sif inquired softly. "I'm going to finish training your two shamans. That's what I'm going to do," she replied grimly. "What else is there?" Whew. That was a heavy chapter, guys. But, I mean, that teaches you a valuable lesson. Don't get too in over your head, you know. Sometimes you have to take the slow route to get where you need to go, right? But man, seeing the girls and Ishak, you know, come into a little bit more into their power it's great. Especially seeing the girls find their confidence, you know, because they've been beaten down so much. It's always a great thing to see for me. Anyway, so that is the chapter that I've read this time. I don't know when I'll record the next one. Hopefully this week or next weekend. I'm going to try to make this more of a weekend thing for myself where I have a 9-to-5 job during the week. So I'm going to try to keep up with it for once. I'm so sorry that I've been gone for so long. I want to thank you guys for joining me on this journey. It's so far been a ton of fun. Like, comment, subscribe. If you know anybody that likes, you know, books on tape, you know, definitely point them my way. I guess it's not really tape, but, you know, whatever. You know what I mean. You know what I'm talking about. Like I said, like, comment, subscribe, come back another time. Please comment. It really helps me out. If you like the video, great. If you have notes, let me know. I don't always take them into account, but sometimes I do. Sometimes I remember, you know. But your comments really do help me out, especially in the algorithm. Recorded books on YouTube, you know, aren't always super popular, but I'm hoping to get there someday, just because it's such a fun thing for me to do. Anyway, I want to wish you guys a good night, a good rest of your weekend. I'm going to go ahead and upload this now. If I forget to, somebody comment down below where the video starts, past my intro, my very long-winded intro and my very long-winded outro. So sorry about that. Anyway, I guess that's it. We will start on chapter 6 the next time I record. And moving right along. Anyway, I'll see you guys later. You guys have a good night and a good weekend. Okay, see y'all later. Bye, I love you.